All right. Welcome, welcome. Let's go ahead and get started. I kind of feel like Charlie Brown in the football, where like we keep thinking, oh, this is going to be the first day, and it gets pulled away from us again and again and again and again. But we are here for real this time, which means that I actually get to talk to you instead of like spamming your inbox. So welcome. Really glad to have you all here. I hope you all had a really good and safe extended holiday break. Again, as I really emphasized in some of the messages that I sent to you, today is the first day of the semester. You do not have any assignments or things that you have been asked to read before today. This is the start of our class. I think it's going to be a really great class, and I'm excited to have you all here as we get into rhetorical criticism. So, I want to start with a question that I'm sure all of you were expecting when you first set foot into rhetorical criticism. How many of you all have seen the movie Ratatouille? Cool. The majority of you, that's fantastic. So Ratatouille was a movie that came out in the late 2000s, starring a rat played by Patton Oswalt, who really wants to be a chef, right? And for the whole premise of the movie, he wants to be a chef, but he's a rat, right? That's kind of gross, it's kind of unsanitary. And I'm very sorry for those of you who have not seen the movie. I am going to be spoiling sections of this late 2000s Disney Pixar film. There is a scene that happens toward the end of the film in which there is a critic who comes to the restaurant in which Remy the rat has prepared a dish. You can probably guess what the name of that dish is. And I wanted to share this brief clip in which the critic offers sort of a meta commentary about criticism. So as you're watching, yes, he's talking about rating a restaurant, but I want you to think about this idea of a critic and how the ideas that this critic is bringing to the table might connect to some other things. We still recall that.
We risk very little, yet enjoy a position over those who offer up their work and themselves to our judgment. We thrive on negative criticism, which is fun to write and read. But the bitter truth we critics must face, that in the grand scheme of things, the average piece of junk is probably more meaningful than our criticism designating itself. But there are times when a critic truly risks something, and that is in the discovery and defense of the new.
So, critics, right? Critics sit on a table, they type up mean reviews, they assess pieces of junk, right? And this idea of a critic as this kind of detached person who doesn't really connect to the lived experiences of the people that it claims to represent and be talking for is an issue that, of course, we see in other fields as well. So, I want you to take a couple minutes on your own to brainstorm. You do not need to turn this in class, but you might get some notes for yourself. In your own words, what does it mean to be a critic? Forget the rhetoric piece. What does it mean to be a critic in a very general sense? You are a critic of something. What does that entail? Secondarily, y'all know a little bit about rhetoric. You might be majors, you might have taken an intro course. So what does it mean to be a critic of rhetoric just based on your brainstorming early stage ideas? And then lastly, why might it be important for us to be critics of rhetoric? Why the heck would something like that matter? So I'll give you a few minutes to start to think about and brainstorm your own thoughts on these questions. And then I'll give you the chance to work in small groups on these as well. New year, same expensive seltzer habit. minute to wrap up your thoughts here. Don't worry, if you definitively knew the answers to these questions, we would have no point of this class. All right. So what I would like us to do now is I would like you to find a group with a few other students in the class, ideally somewhere in the 3 to 6 range, although you're definitely welcome to find people who are conveniently located near you and rearrange the chairs. What I would like you to do is to share some of the things that you all wrote and thought about in response to these questions. And in a little bit, I'm going to have a representative from each group that you all can pick who can share your responses to these questions in class. First of all, what does it mean to be a critic? What does it mean to be a critic of rhetoric? Why might criticism of rhetoric be important? You're also welcome to say hello, introduce yourselves if you see some new faces, and go ahead and share some of your thoughts and conversation on some of these topics. Yeah. Your conversation. Yeah. All right. Make sure you've got your representative to the group. Let's go ahead and come back together as well. So here's what I'm going to have us do. I would like to have you go over in groups. I want to start by having each member of the group introduce themselves with how they'd like to be referred to in the class. Their year in school and major that you've declared or considering. I imagine you might hear a fair bit of RHMS, but you've got some variation in people who might be taking the class. Once everybody in your group has introduced yourselves, then I'm going to ask that your representative share your responses to these questions. And again, not about right or wrong answers. The purpose of this class is to start to break down and understand these questions together as a group. So we're just starting to get into it and explore. I know a lot of you have taken the class with me before, 203 or 210 in the fall. A lot of y'all are new faces, so whether you are new or returning, I'm really excited to get to know and work with you all in this class. So let's start over here on this side.
My name is Connor. I'm a junior and I'm Carson. I'm a junior. He's in Jonah. And I'm an RHMS major. Hello, I'm Dylan. He has pronouns. I'm a senior and I'm a rhetoric and media major. My name is Trey Morris, and I'm a senior, and I'm also a rhetoric and media major. And I'm gonna be the representative for our group.
Awesome.
So for number one, what does it mean to be critical? We said being critical is to analyze the pros and cons of something that they're analyzing. What does it mean to be a critic of rhetoric? To criticize rhetoric is to look at it from many different and opposing viewpoints, and we're analyzing rhetorical strategies and other techniques. And it is important to criticize rhetoric in order to analyze the power that rhetoric can hold as it pertains from the past to the present.
Yeah. Awesome. So, as you highlight here, Trey, right? Being a critic allows us to assess the pros and cons. We're going to push that even further in this class, not just looking at the pros and cons, but what does rhetoric do? What does it mean? How does it function ideologically? How does it shape our shared understanding of reality? This is a really good starting point. Of rhetoric, might be analyzing, opposing, or contrasting viewpoints. As some of you who took to agree with me know, sometimes people will argue in increasingly petty academic essays with each other. However, right, rhetoric might mean understanding that there is going to be disagreement, and symbols are a means by which we can articulate and engage with that disagreement. So what, right? Many of us know who are majors or are thinking about rhetoric that, of course, rhetoric, words are powerful, symbolic interaction shapes our understanding of the world. So to be a critic of rhetoric is to understand the power, the impact, the weight that our words, our images, our discourse has, and to understand how that weight has been moved. Good starting point. Let's move over to this group back here.
My name is Miles, Stephen pronouns. I'm an APS major.
I'm Nora, I use they pronouns. I'm an English major.
I'm Jude, Ethan's pronouns. I'm a junior in art.
Hello, me, they pronouns. I'm a junior in college.
I'm Jacob, Ethan's pronouns. I'm a junior veteran.
I wrote a user pronouns in junior, also an RHMS major. And I Okay, so what does it mean to be a critic? Kind of just generally to give opinions on something beyond surface level observation, but we made a distinction that really anyone can be a critic, anyone can be critical of anything, but in terms of like a critic that like you would trust or look to, like for example, a film critic is someone who has a lot of expertise and has been reviewing films for a really long time. Like experience and credibility sets one apart in terms of being a critic. What does it mean to be a critic of rhetoric? We talked about like discussing intended meaning and unintended meaning from different pieces of rhetoric and words, and like what is the person's purpose, and also important to take into account the context in which a piece was created. What is like the author's viewpoint? Why are they writing it? When, etc. And then why might criticism of rhetoric be important? I didn't really get to this, but something I wrote is that like it's important to think critically about rhetoric, and that like rather than just blindly accept it, questioning things is really important. Of course, as time goes on, like certain language becomes outdated, and it's important to acknowledge that and like critique things that maybe like commonly held beliefs.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Brooke. Tell. Y'all all taken a rhetoric course before. So it's a really good starting point. If you haven't, right? We're still going to be helping you to break down and understand a lot of these ideas. So the idea of expertise and having background to be a critic that goes beyond observation, but means like anybody can argue on the internet and go down in the comments, right? But to really be a critic is to go into that role of having background and expertise. There's a reason, right, like film critics such as Roger Ebert are as well regarded as they are, right? Is that they have not only done it a lot, but we trust or lean on them for their opinions on things. It's interesting to see the shift in that as we look at things like Rotten Tomatoes scores. So, critic of rhetoric, right? As you mentioned, there's this idea of intended versus unintended meaning. How many people have read or are familiar with Roland Barthes' Death of the Author? Okay, a few of you. So Roland Barthes contends that when it comes to text, right, the author in authorial intent is difficult. Once it goes out in the world, right, the author can try to make something, but if one of the genders decides to do a Pepsi ad where they are like giving a Pepsi to law enforcement and saying, hey, look, we've solved systemic racism, that's a problem. They might have intended for it to help Pepsi as a brand. That is not how it played out in practice. This idea of unintended meaning of context and how audiences and people are active receivers and engagers with text is an incredibly important thing too. You can put together a great speech, but if you are unprepared, right? I think about the example of the 2020 vice presidential debate. What do people remember about that debate? Probably not much of the content. They probably remember that a fly landed on Mike Pence's head, right? So this idea of what is intended versus what actually impacts the publics and audiences who receive is important. Thinking critically, right? We are exposed to countless messages, whether they're advertisements, political speech, images, film. We know that that has weight. So our kind of critical thinking goal here, and one thing I really enjoy here at Lucy Clark is our ability to understand and break down those messages and what they mean. That helps us do criticism as practice. Okay, so let's see. I think we've got another group that's down this line, starting here.
Yeah, hi, I'm Anna, she, her pronoun. I'm a junior and RHMS and theater double major.
My name's Ethan, I use he, him pronouns. I'm a junior and I'm also a RHMS theater major.
I'm Sophie, she, her. I'm a junior and a rhetoric.
I'll be representative.
Awesome, thank you.
So when we were talking about what it means to be a critic, we kind of were talking about it, and it just came to this idea of it being that being a critic is that it's engaging with a body of work in a way that examines its position in society and how it both contributes to and is reflective of that society and the time in which it was created. Being a critic of rhetoric, a lot of it's already been said by the first few groups, but being a critic of rhetoric means to examine and I don't want to say critique, but to critique the ways in which we communicate, and especially in this day and age with the many different modalities in which that communication happens, and why it's important. You mentioned earlier, like that, now that anyone can kind of come online and create these arguments and have these stats online, it's important that we all have the ability to think critically and engage with these arguments in a way that
We're being careful what's the truth.
So one could say rhetoric is situated, right? Context, situation, of course, matter. As you all bring up as well, right? How do we communicate and engage with each other? That's something that we can analyze through criticism, why it's important. And to understand, to advocate for our own arguments and issues that we care about, and to understand and engage in these questions of mis and disinformation. I would argue that as rhetorical critics, right, we have a social responsibility to interrogate and examine mis and disinformation and the ways in which it shapes our understandings of a variety of social and political issues. Welcome. So let's go down here to this one.
My name is Vesna. I'm a sophomore. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm an RHMS major. My name is Mia. I use any and all pronouns. I'm a junior and I'm a RHMS.
I'm Rebecca, I'm a senior, English major in rhetoric and interview.
Hey, I'm Lily. I'm a sophomore and I'm a student.
What are y'all's thoughts?
I'll read the group. A lot of what we were going to say have already been outlined, but essentially, to be a critic means, aside from agreeing or disagreeing with the value of the content we critique, and rudimentarily explaining why it's bad and good, thumbs up, down situation, it means expanding on the context and analyzing the content in more contextually. And to be a critic of rhetoric is acknowledging why challenges in the content or of a piece may appear, diving deeply into meaning and intention. And if it's sort of similar to the group set about intentional meaning or unintentional context of ideas. And why criticism of rhetoric Rebecca, can you establish why?
Why it's important? Yeah, we talked about the power, but I think like the power of rhetoric, but like what power is the power of rhetoric supporting, you know, like what are the structural issues or ideas that are either consciously or subconsciously revealed through it.
Next. So I really like, you know, again, as we're going through groups, you might have heard some similar ideas, but we're continuing to dig into these ideas, right? So for example, over here, good rhetorical criticism explains what rhetoric does, it explains how rhetoric is working and operating. The text does not speak for itself. We don't just block quote and say, hey, look, that does a thing, right? We explain what that thing is and how that thing works. We're breaking down and understanding an image and how an image operates rhetorically, right? We have to do that work, and that's challenging. Secondarily, this idea of intent, right? One of the biggest challenges is how do we even determine intent? How do we know what intent is? How do we know that somebody is telling the truth when they say that they have good intentions, right? Those are challenges that we grapple with. How can we assess and make sense of intent? Some rhetorical critics have answers for us, but it's a tricky proposition. And lastly, what power of rhetoric? I really like this question, the idea that rhetoric does have power and weight, but whose power is being represented? How can we see the ways that power works? How can we assess the underlying ideology and assumptions that are guiding a piece? How is it moving us or persuading or convincing us, drawing from a set of assumptions about how the world works and how disparities operate, right? These are questions we'll get at as well. So let's move into this middle row over here. Right over here.
I'm Tallulah. I'm a sophomore. I'm an RHMS major in history. I'm Tully. I'm a RHMS major and I'm a sophomore. Hi everyone, I'm Ava. I use with pronouns. I'm a senior RHMS. I'm the representative from this group. So for the first question, we thought basically just being critic is right, assessing the value of something, but also taking it from whatever it is on a small scale and how it might be accessed on a larger scale. And then for the second question, we kind of thinking about like, by doing this work on other messages or speeches, whatever the rhetoric is, considering the ethical and moral implications of that, and then creating some kind of argument about that argument. And then for the last question, we were thinking it's really just kind of to suss out the phonies and just like not lead, make sure you're not being led down like the wrong path. Better is very.
Like the next time we do a flyer, come to RHMS 301. We stuff out the photos. But I do really like the point that you all bring out to your group in discussing some of these ideas. First of all, this question of value. It's not only judgment, but it's a judgment connected to values, where values are expressed through criticism and represented as critics. We'll be looking at a piece later in the semester by Chuck Morris, who's a pure rhetorical scholar, who brings in and discusses how his positionality and identity inevitably shapes the way that he does criticism. So how we come in and our values and beliefs, what gets us excited? Like, honestly, like some of the pieces I've written have been because I've been angry about something, some social injustice or issue, and I'm like, you know what? It's really going to solve this problem. Write an academic paper about it. So whatever. But there's a problem or issue that gets you excited and thinking about and engaging in stuff. So this ethical question is an important one. And as we think about how we engage in doing rhetorical criticism, again, it comes down to assessing the truth, right? The accuracy. Some of us might dispute capital T truth. Others might say, yes, we need to understand and break down the truth. We know, of course, and I'm not going to regurgitate Plato because I'm sure many of y'all are sick of him, but right, Plato's concerned from the very beginning. Rhetoric is an obstacle in truth. Rhetoric obfuscates and hides the truth. Rhetoric is evil, right? Where we find ourselves on rhetoric and the potential good or harm it does is always grappling with these questions about rhetoric as a tool for harm. And let's move lastly here to this group in the front, starting over here.
Hi, I'm Eliza. I use her pronouns and they're an RHMS major.
Hi, I'm Serena. I also use she, her pronouns, and I am a senior double major in RHMS and SOAN.
I'm planning shooting pronouns, I'm an RHMS major.
And I will be our speaker. It's kind of echoing what's already been said at this point, but we said for what it means to be a critic, to be a person who picks apart the basic elements of something based on standards that we have developed just societally, and then ultimately designating some kind of value or weight to it. And then for the second question, we said that it is to examine the various elements of rhetoric or language in order to better understand its underlying elements, intention, and how it works. And then for the final question, we basically talked about how the criticism of rhetoric allows us to better understand how our language is also being used as a tool or a weapon in ways, as we've mentioned before, either intentional or not. And also just the influence of language on the world around us and how the world seems to us.
Yeah. I really like how, again, you're kind of getting at even deeper on some of these ideas. So the idea of picking apart and kind of arranging and engaging with the text, one of our challenges as critics is, what is the text? What are we choosing to study? We are, as some scholars might argue, creating the very text that we choose to analyze. We are picking what is important. We are translating and making sense of it. If we're looking at a bunch of tweets, right, which do we pick? How do we break those down? So we are doing work to analyze and break down those pieces. Understanding the elements of language and also understanding that how we communicate and engage day to day is shaped by those relationships that we have to media, ideology, the ways of thinking about and understanding the world, right? There is a lot of work in rhetoric that challenges our definition, our terminology, our words that we use. There was a colleague I had a chance to work with who helped me to rethink a term. The term was food desert, right? You might be familiar with the idea of a food desert to describe a community or area in which the access to safe, healthy, quality food is not necessarily available. And this rhetorical scholar pushed back against the term food desert because he explained that it assumes that this place is geographically defined and distinct on its own terms. That something is a desert, it is inherently inaccessible when the things that create food inaccessibility and inequities are socially and culturally constructed, which helped me to think about that whole difference. So our work is rhetoric, and in rhetoric is to break down and understand communication we do daily and how that interacts with those larger texts. Then lastly, we've got a couple people here in the front.
Hi, I'm Destiny. I use she, her pronouns. I am a sophomore in RHMS. I'm Miles. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a sophomore and I'm also a rhetoric communicator.
Hi, my name is Gabriella. You can call me Gabby. I'm a sophomore. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm also an RHMS.
And I will be represented. We basically said that a critic is someone that we typically associate with expertise, and not, you don't need to be, but that basically judges and analyzes various medias based off of a list of like criteria usually. And then a critic of rhetoric, we talked about how we think of critiquing the implications of certain bodies of work, such as the appeal of what is being presented and the level of effectiveness of that. And then for the third question, it was kind of simple. We said that not all rhetoric is good rhetoric, and so it's important to critique that and how embedded rhetoric is in our everyday lives, such as advertisement and just what we consume on a daily basis. So it's important to constantly critique that.
Yeah, absolutely. To use one example, we had a senior capstone presentation this last semester who gave a really great presentation talking about how the language of invasive species is used in describing various species in a way that the negative values are going to, of course, connect very closely to language surrounding immigration, migration, and the experiences of folks who are undocumented or have unstable living situations. right? So this question of these connections and how rhetoric is embedded and shapes our understanding of the world. I also like this idea of criteria. We have ways of assessing and exploring texts through rhetoric. So we'll be looking at some of the earlier ways of doing rhetorical criticism, present really clear criteria and ways that we do that. We walk before we run, but as we continue to move on, we'll continue to look at ways of doing rhetorical criticism that look really different. Anybody that I didn't have the chance to get to or have introductions? We got everybody? Awesome. I've got a lot of names already from returning folks. If you're new, my goal is to get your names down within the first few weeks of class. So I really appreciate y'all's introductions and learning about some of these ideas that you all have here about how we do and think about rhetorical criticism. We're going to be exploring these and a lot more questions in this class, but I think we have a good start in understanding what rhetorical criticism does and how it works. There's a lot of ways of doing many of the things that you all highlighted as important that we'll be able to get into the nitty-gritty as the semester continues. So the goals of this course, you might have heard from your advisor that this is a more writing intensive course. That is true, but my goal is to try to make sure that that is as reasonable and manageable for you as possible. That means a few things. I have kind of staggered the writing assignments so that they are due a few weeks away from each other. There's the opportunity to do extensions if you need them. I also am available for student hours and I can review rough drafts and outlines. But you will be doing writing projects in this class that involve doing rhetorical criticism. So you'll have a few in the class and then you'll have a final one that we'll do at the end of the semester that is a revision of one of your original three. We'll get more into the details of that in just a little bit. We're engaging with the tools, right? So a lot of you brought up that examining ideology, examining text, understanding what texts do, how they work, how they create inequities, how they can be forces for good. Like, we have a lot of ideas. We might be critical of a text as we see it. We know there's something going on with it, but how do we do that, right? The goal of this class is to give us the instruments and tools that we need to kind of chisel down and figure out how we can go about analyzing the thing that's got our attention. Next, we want to hone skills in argumentative writing and developing and substantiating the claims that we make. A lot of you mentioned, right, making an argument, making a judgment are things that are really important to do in rhetorical criticism. So one of our goals and the thing that I want to help push you on in this class is to be able to make those judgments, those calls, those evaluations effectively and supporting those arguments really well. I come from a background in speech and debate. I competed on the team at Lewis and Clark for 4 years, and I currently coach on the team. And I have a lot of ideas about how to make effective arguments and how to arrange those effectively in your assignments for this class. In this class, we'll have a lot of opportunities for you to work together, to workshop together, to learn from each other, and to see the work that you all are doing. I think that the topics and issues you all pick are really cool, really interesting, and things that we'll be working on together. And the idea that rhetorical criticism is not this static thing, right? Rhetorical criticism, what you will not be doing in this class, if you were worried that this was the entire semester, the experience and totality of rhetorical criticism is not dead white dudes writing about how great other dead white dudes spoke. There are some foundations and elements that certainly connect to that. And yes, there is the importance of analyzing texts and understanding ideas that come from those kind of perspectives that come from sort of Western rhetorical canon, but we're going to be moving outside that. We're going to be understanding rhetoric that happens in things such as social media, in things such as plays. We have an example in this class of a criticism that looks at the stage production of Wicked. We're going to be looking at a lot of different ways in which rhetoric is operating and happening in the world. So rhetorical criticism, what constitutes a text, is not just the speech. It is a lot of different ways that symbols and symbolic interactions shape our sense of social reality and connection to one another. What it means for something to be a text and how we can choose for something to be a text, we'll get into more of that too. So to give you a little bit of context about me and where I'm coming from, again, a number of you know me already, but I'd love to introduce and get to know you all better if you're new here. Would also love to get to know you all better in office hours. I think it's really cool to learn about the work and things that our majors or minors or interested folks in rhetoric are doing. Really exciting to be. If you don't know, probably the funniest thing about my background is that I was once on the other side of this, and I was a student at Lewis and Clark. In fact, I think I had an international relations course with Cyrus Perkovi, like in this group. I grew up in the Portland area, and I really wanted a liberal arts experience. And I was a student at Lewis and Clark from 2010 through 2014. I was originally an English and political science double major. However, I did all the things. I took 8 a.m. econ with Cliff Becker, and I got into my senior capstone, a law seminar with Todd Walker. And I traveled a lot for speech and debate. I overstretched myself, and he kicked me out. So I did get out with the English major, but a cautionary tale on setting boundaries, limits, and not overstretching yourself. It was deserved, and helped me learn a thing or two. So I thought I was going to be a high school English teacher for the longest time. I really love teaching. I love working with students. My sister, amazing. She is a middle school language arts teacher in the Portland area, and so that's what I was going to do. But I really fell in love with speech and debate. I really got into advocating on issues that I cared about, doing like persuasive speeches, informative speaking, and I really wanted to explore those ideas further. So as I was graduating, as I was at Debate Nationals, I get an email to offer to coach and get a master's in communication at the University of the Pacific in Stockton, California. So I went down I-5 and I worked at University of the Pacific for 2 years. My master's thesis looked at trans representation in media. I got really into understanding marginality, LGBTQ+ issues as represented in television and film. And I decided after that, you know what, I want to put off life even further, and what better way to do that than to keep doing grad school. So I went down I-84 this time to the University of Utah, where I got my PhD in communication studies. A lot of my work at Utah, I really started to get into areas of disability rhetoric, critical health communication, and then sort of the relationship between that and media. And my dissertation looked at the experiences of individuals who are both neurodivergent as well as LGBTQ+, and the experiences of stigma that they navigated and advocated about in the context of healthcare. After that, and after doing a postdoc in Utah, I did in fact graduate in the academic job market in 2020, which was as wild as you might expect. I had a chance to go to La Grande, Oregon, population 13,000, where I worked for 2 years as assistant professor of communication and chaired the department over there. Working with a lot of really cool students, it gave me a lot of perspective on how, you know, stark the divide between the different sides of the state are, right? There's kind of Portland and the sort of West Coast, and I think a lot of stereotypes about the other side of the state that I gained a lot of context and understanding of. So a lot of issues in the more rural parts of the state that people feel are not being represented, and I felt like I was able to gain a lot of perspective there. However, it's real cold, and the roads are not great, and I, of course, have family in the Portland area. So I was given the opportunity to work at Lewis and Clark in the Rhetoric and Media Studies department. This is my second semester here. I worked here in the fall as well. So I'm really excited to be here. I really enjoy, like, this is doing what I love, where I love, which is not a thing you typically get in academia. So I am very grateful to be here, really excited to work with you all. Rhetorical criticism is one of my favorite classes, because I'm really into understanding and breaking down and seeing student work as they're analyzing and engaging texts. It's super exciting. As mentioned, some of the work that I do is in disability and neurodiversity rhetoric, as well as marginality in media. I do a lot of work that's examining like social and online media and the ways in which these types of issues can be analyzed under a rhetorical lens. A lot of you brought up the idea of rhetoric being situated. We'll be getting to that later, the idea of incorporating elements of qualitative studies such as interviews, ethnography, and that kind of work into rhetoric, I think is a really cool area that we'll be exploring in this class. I coach speech and debate, so if you see me like wildly gesturing on a weekend, that's because I'm trying to help and coach the team. So I enjoy doing that, and a lot of the questions that guide me are about advocacy, social change, and again, engaging in the text like social media that we don't necessarily think about as traditional rhetoric, are things that rhetorical criticism nevertheless gives us resources to analyze. One challenge that I also give myself whenever teaching this class is I will make a rhetorical criticism with you as you all are working through your own in this class too, to kind of explore my process in developing this project along with yours. I'm also a human being and do take some time away from the office every now and then. This is my dog Sylvie. She's a Labrador Retriever. Her big thing is getting massive sticks outside and just dragging them for miles and miles. She gets so excited and wiggly, she bewilders people. How big the sticks and branches are, they oftentimes block the trail. In my spare time, my like big hobby and thing that I love to do is I really love independent video game design. So I have a project that I've been working on for a few years. If you've ever played like the Fire Emblem series or Persona games, it's kind of a tactical role-playing game. It doesn't have any graphics or anything yet, but I am working on it, and I really enjoy doing that for fun. I also love live music. I love catching shows in Portland and, listening to music when, you're not frozen over and we're able to access those. Really enjoyed seeing the Mountain Goats over the summer. Really excited for some of the new stuff coming this year, seeing what music is. So, 3 things that I wish I knew when I was an undergrad at Lewis and Clark that I would encourage for you all to think about. Again, this is not your first rodeo, it's not all of you, but I do think it's helpful to kind of see what it was like in my process, knowing, of course, that a lot has changed in the time since. As you all know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So what I've noticed from this last semester is that it's kind of like, it's like a rope that's like a little bit loose, where the motivation and excitement is very high at the beginning of the semester. And then there's this time, it's this moment when it hits, like 6-7 weeks into the semester. And people get slammed and swamped with work, right? People feel overstretched, stressed out, people are getting sick and having problems, and things get rough in that middle chunk. And then at the end of the semester, we rally and arrange all of the assignments that we can, put it in a garbage bin, and there you go. Go fast. So, marathon, not a sprint, right? And my goal is to try to keep the pacing reasonable to, for instance, on days in which you have criticism due, to not require reading for those days. My pledge to you all is I will never add assignments to the course. I'm not going to say, hey, here's a surprise thing that's due next week, right? The only thing that I will do is make things easier, give you an extension or more time in an assignment or something like that. So what you see on the schedule, feel free to punch that into your planner. I try to be really clear from the first day exactly what you can expect from the semester. It's also a really good opportunity if you need an extension, because you have a bottleneck in a week, you can always request those in advance to help manage your pace. One thing that I really respect and appreciate that I've learned working with you all, that I wish I had a better vocabulary for as a student, is the idea of creating reasonable and manageable boundaries with your classes. The same way that a lot of people do with work, right? Of acknowledging that you work what you are paid to work and nothing more, right? To that end, right, there's a high ceiling in getting an A and doing well in the class, right? That requires a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of time and attention to do. That is not necessarily everybody's goal, right? And I do not want people to compromise their health or well-being for the sake of, doing well. And so supporting your boundaries and your limits on what you're hoping to do out of this class, especially in the context of your other responsibilities, assignments, and everything else, that's important, right? Our goals, what we're hoping to do might look a little bit different depending on who you are. I wish I knew this because, again, as a student here, and it is a little bit awkward to say, oh, hey, I got a C+ in the class that I took with you, and now you are the dean of the college. Hi. So I can understand the feeling that you worry about your performance in class reflecting on you as a person. And I can promise you, we do not look at you all with letter grades over your heads. You all are human beings, right? You could totally flunk the class and be a fantastic person, because those things are not correlated, right? So I want to acknowledge and understand that who you are as a human, your boundaries and your limits, not necessarily represent the grade that you receive. And as you all know, right, we're always already becoming, we're learning, we're growing. That is what this is all about. You find yourself in a very different place by the end of the semester and what you're interested in, focused on, and studying. Even if you're as declared and you're a junior and senior, you find topics that are interesting for you, you want to go down a different path. That's awesome. And I encourage you to lean into that space in college where we're growing and doing interesting things. So I want to go over just a couple quick highlights from the syllabus and course schedule so that you know what to expect. I am asking you to review the syllabus and course schedule for class on Wednesday, which is available for you to see on Moodle. But just a few quick highlights that I think will help you as you're getting ready and thinking about our next class. The student hours I have, 9 to 10, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and also Wednesdays from 2 to 4. That does not mean that it's a limit of when I can meet with you. My office hours at those times are drop-in, so I'll be in the office at those times. But if you ever want to meet with me and those times do not work in your schedule, just send me some times you're interested in, and I'm happy to chat about assignments, to help you catch up, anything else that you're interested in. The FOSS, Rhetorical Criticism, Exploration, and Practice textbook is available at the bookstore. If you are looking for an affordable option and you are comfortable with an ebook, there's an ebook rental on Amazon that's about $16. So I encourage you to do that if you're comfortable with the ebook option, or to go up to the bookstore to grab your FOSS book. That's the only book you need. I try to reduce costs wherever able. If you're having trouble accessing that book for Wednesday, since I am asking you to read a little bit from that book for Wednesday, please let me know, and I'm happy to support you on that. Everything else is available for you to read on Moodle. So some of the other supplemental articles and examples are things that we will be looking to Moodle to do. We discussed a lot of the basics about the course, including elements of the course format. I'm not going to go into exhaustive detail about some of these things. Just know that I'm really serious about accessibility, about supporting folks, for example, who need OSA accommodations or additional support in the class. Really important to me. Again, I do a lot of work in disability scholarship, and I am disabled myself, so I understand many of the challenges you might experience as a student. You can use TAC to take notes, participate in class. I encourage you to come to class as you are able. I take the position, a lot of grading in classes exacerbates disparities. You will be updated on your grade in the class as the semester continues, but I will give you the option to reflect on your overall performance in the class and whether or not you feel the letter grade that you have accurately or not reflects the labor that you've been putting in. Again, you get out what you put in, and I want to respect the level of work and labor that you see yourself wanting to put into this class, knowing that this is not your only class as a student. So, in addition to that, I look over rough drafts and outlines if you would like. So there are going to be some shorter writing assignments in the class. These are called criticism exercises. And the idea of these is it's not formal essays, but it's a chance for you to practice doing some of these different methods of criticism, so that when you go up to write a short criticism in this class, you feel like you've had some practice doing the thing that you've been asked to do in your writing. So it's designed to help you kind of get your bearings. For instance, this week we'll start to look at neo-Aristotelian criticism. Yeah, question.
Oh, then you can, I was just waiting.
Okay, no worries. I will get to your question in just a little bit. So there's a total of 10 criticism exercises. The first is already up for you on Moodle. You are ready to complete that. 8 out of the 10 will need to be completed in the class. You can either skip 2 you don't want, or your 2 lowest will be dropped. As we get closer, we'll be talking about these short criticisms in the class, but these are asking you to analyze the article. Okay.
So, sorry, what was about that?
Yeah.
So the way you have it phrased in for the criticism exercises is that you have to complete 8 of them for full credit, obviously, but then if you say if more than 8 are completed, then the 2 lowest exercises will be dropped. So if I did 9, that would be grading 7 of them.
If you did 9, oh, I see what you mean. I'll rephrase that. I am grading your top. I am grading your top. So like if you have like 25, 25, 25, 25, 17, you've done 9, and like your 9th is the 17, you're 17.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I'll revise that for clarity, but like your top 8 scores are the ones that be. Good question.
And how long should these be?
Generally, I like to give a bit of a framework. You'll see, like, generally it's just a few sentences per part. So there's typically about 3 parts. Each part will be around a paragraph. So nothing too long and intensive, although you can definitely go hard if you want to. But they're designed to more get you practicing and doing the method of criticism that we're talking about. Good question. So we have the short criticisms in the class. We'll talk more about them as we get closer. I like to make sure that I have a full assignment description and expectations at least 2 weeks before an assignment is due. But that is allowing you to pick an artifact and analyze that artifact with a method of criticism. The way the class is scheduled, there are a total of 9 different methods of criticism we'll be looking at. We go 3, 3, 3. So for criticism number 1, you'll have 3 to choose from. For criticism number 2, you'll have 3 to choose from, etc. And we'll go down the line from there. You'll be doing a different artifact for each of those, but you'll get the chance to practice some of these. We'll do a final presentation in the class. Basically, you'll get to choose one of the 3 criticisms that you feel the best about or are interested in expanding further. You'll share that work with the class as a whole. We are going to be meeting on that finals day, so keep a note of that in order to wrap up our presentations, given the number of people in class. And then at the end of the semester, we'll turn in an expanded revised criticism, integrate some of the feedback that you receive from me, as well as your peers, to hopefully prevent you from dumping off garbage. At the end of the semester, I want you to have something, whether it's a writing sample or just a piece you're interested in, that you feel good about, right? And that's the goal coming out of this class. It's a piece of writing that you feel good about. So that is the kind of overall layout of the course. In addition to that, I have the course schedule that's posted on Moodle as well. Again, I encourage you to use that with things like Planner, Google Calendar, or any other device that you might use. You'll notice the due dates on assignments, and anything else outside of FOSS is available for you to access on Moodle as well. Lastly, I've unmuted Moodle, so you should be able to access the Moodle page for this course, which has all of the logistical information, syllabus, and schedule. And then you'll notice that the first criticism exercise is available for you to complete as well. So getting to Ava's question, I break down like what's expected on each part, so you know kind of the amount of time. If you want to send a draft of that, you can as well if you're worried about whether or not you have enough content for that. So that is due on Sunday. That's not a big writing assignment, but it's just a way to get started and get thinking about these ideas. For Wednesday, let's read a very first PDF, Brock Ride, Rhetorical Criticism and Argument. And chapter 2 is also very short and fast. Chapter 1 reviews principles and rhetoric. You don't have to read it, you can if you would like to. Next class, we're going to be talking about how we evaluate and judge the process of criticism. The last thing that I'm going to ask that you all do on your way out is grab one of these entrance surveys and bring it in, completed class on Wednesday. This just gives me the chance to get to know you better and learn about what works and what helps you. I'm available for any questions you might have. If you are on the wait list, please stick around for a quick second. And I really look forward to seeing you all again in class on Wednesday. Have a great rest of your day and stay safe out there. I think it's not that. So what I'm going to be doing is and they vote. Yeah. So there's been a couple of hours. So I think I should be able to I'm going to double check what's in this book now. I think given a couple of hours.
Okay, sounds good. Okay.
Awesome.
See you on Wednesday.
And similar vote for you.
forget the vote.
Yes, I think I sent our invite to that tomorrow.
Oh, I'll check that, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to shake your hand, say thank you for, I know we're communicating.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it now. Yeah.
Of course, I'm sorry that you didn't.
Yeah, it's okay.
And I talked to them
Yeah,
about that.
yeah,
so-
you mentioned, I'm gonna be today.
Yeah.
I just appreciate your busy.
Yeah, well, we want to be grabbing it in, and I'm sorry that that happened. Whenever that happens, like with you.
Yeah. I'll be on the.
And you're really,
Yeah.
look, you are like very top of the list.
Yeah.
So because we had a couple drops, I am just gonna be able to give you the consent, right after the stand. Clear, and, I'll send you a confirmation. And then, yeah, you can register. Yeah, of course. Great to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was telling you. That's, I will.
Yeah. No worries, yeah, we'd love to see that.
So we will.
Yeah, awesome, yeah. And you are, we're getting the double people, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So sorry. But thank you for letting me.
That was when you were the date today.
Yeah. That's all. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Beth.
Hey.
Yeah.